recording to the cloud. So welcome to March 23rd's edition of the SIG CLI bi-weekly meeting. I'm Sean Sullivan. I am your host. And why don't we get into announcements? The first announcement is that next week we have the code freeze for the 124 release. So it would behoove you to, if you have anything that you need to get in by 124, to do it sooner rather than later. It's already starting to back up. So in addition, there's going to be the SIG CLI, the initial SIG CLI and SIG Apps Review Club meeting on March 28th. Would Eddie or Mache want to say anything more about that?
So yeah, it's basically the idea is that we want to get a group of people who are interested in learning how to do reviews and eventually grow in the community ladders over to reviewers and approvers for either or both of those SIGs. Since I'm representing here both SIG CLI and SIG apps, and I was talking with Eddie because we've been bouncing this idea for quite a while now that we want to grow the group of people who can work, review, and approve code for SIG CLI. I brought in SIG apps as well into the picture, and we figure out, and we wrote it down as well in the annual reports that we will be kicking it off. So we're hoping to get it initially organized on Monday. Paris will join us, to help it initiate, and then we will see where this will go. We're hoping to meet every 4 weeks, basically. So everyone are more than welcome to join. Bring your PRs for reviews and learn. Katrina is asking whether it's specifically for Cube code. I don't see any objections to including customize as well into it. If there will be people interested in, we can probably figure out balance or how many people will be interested in either.
Great, thanks, Mate. So our next announcement is that the test team, SIG Test, sounds like they have tried to move to Go 118. And the CI is, I heard that a couple of tests were broken. I heard this recently. Did someone whoever put that announcement on, would you like to say some more?
Yeah, I put these two. Yeah, if you have tests failing on a PR, specifically integration or verify tests, that's not something in your PR most likely. That was just a broken upgrade for the image that runs your test. So there's more in the SIG testing channel if you come across that. And I put this call for reviewers on here on top of the club that Mache mentioned on Monday. We got a lot of open PRs. So anyone who is interested in doing reviews or becoming a reviewer or dipping your toes, please feel free to dive into any PR that needs a review or is not approved and give it a once over, and then tag us for approval. Just give it a shot. Like, you have nothing wrong, nothing to lose. There's no harm you can absolutely do by reviewing some PRs. Best way to find these, great question, Antoine. I will drop a filter into the chat. But yeah, please give us a help, and feel free to shout out any PRs that have stalled. I know I owe a bunch of people reviews, so I'm on those yesterday and today. Sorry.
Great. So why don't we move on to introductions? So at this point in the meeting, we'd like those who haven't been to our meeting or we haven't met before to introduce themselves if you want to. So this is an opportunity to raise your profile and for the rest of your colleagues in Kubernetes to actually meet you. Most of the names on here seem pretty, seem like I've seen most of them before.
I guess I've never really introduced myself. My name is Marcus Puckett. I'm, I don't know, pretty new to doing software code. as like anything more than just a hobby. So, but and then looking to contribute to the SIG CLI Cube Kettle, and then probably customize as well. But yeah, hello.
Great. Great to meet you.
Hi, Marcus. Hi, everyone. I'm also new, first meeting today. I just joined Google. I'm with Natasha and Ewan, and we'll be working on Customize. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you, Anna.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm a Helm maintainer. I'm recently a Cobra maintainer as well. And I am really focusing on shell completion. So it's really a weird obsession that I have. So if you hear me talking too much about it, then feel free to stop me.
Welcome, everyone. And thank you, Mark, especially. It's about time we got you to one of these meetings. So
yeah, thanks for joining us. Okay, why don't we move to the topics? And the first topic is going to be Kevin giving us an update on the server-side validation. Are you ready, Kevin?
Yeah. So I mentioned in a couple previous meetings that I've been working on getting server-side validation into beta this cycle. And so that would replace the client-side validation that we're doing. And there's basically 2 PRs left on that. One that actually does the server side, one that actually does the switch in kube control from using client-side validation to defaulting to using server-side validation if it's available on the server. That PR is ready for review, and yeah, desperately need some eyes on it. Would love to get anyone from SIG CLI to take a look at it. And then there's a follow-up PR on that I'm still working on now to get to fix basically all the ETE tests that break when you don't have kube control defaulting to using client-side validation anymore. So that's still a work in progress, but it would make things go a lot faster if that first one could get some reviewers. I've got Jordan Leggett reviewing the first one, but would also love to have eyes from SIG CLI. So that's my status. Thanks.
Great, thanks for that, Kevin. Does anybody have any questions for Kevin?
I'm gonna drop a Slack thread in our SIG CLI channel and pin it. It'll just be anyone who needs open reviews, please just drop your review link in that Slack thread. Thank you.
Okay, so Mark, would you like to present and to talk about completions?
Yeah, thanks. Multiple.
Do I have to stop screen sharing?
Let's see. We'll test.
Yeah, let me just stop and see if you're able to. Great, I can see that. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, I can't see what you guys see, so let me know if doesn't make sense. Okay, so this is probably again niche. Some people, I'm assuming, might not really know or care much about it, but there's been a request for a long time now to have shell completion for kubectl plugins. So I posted a proposal, and I think what I'd like to do today is simply get the idea across of what the design is and make sure that it fits with what you experts expect. So I changed slides. I hope you can see that. I copy pasted a demo, but basically I can do it here. Can you see my shell?
Yes.
Okay, so if I do temp, so I have my own build of kubectl with the proposed PR, and then if I try to complete, I now get plugins. So I have certain plugins installed. Crew is one of them. So the first aspect of the framework is to complete plugin names. Okay, but once you have plugin names, you want to know what the plugin can do, so you can continue, and then you get completion from the plugin crew itself. So then it supports a completion command, help, index info, all this stuff. Okay, so this was just to show that the PR actually does work in the way I envision it. So now let's go over the fundamentals so we can agree on what we need. So one, kubectl doesn't know what the plugin does, right? The plugin is completely independent. So if we talk about shell completion, it's only the plugin that can know what the completions choices can be. Okay, that's criteria, well, not criteria, fundamental number one. Stop me if you don't agree. Another one that it took us a while to realize is that we can't ask the plugin binary to give us completion choices. Because if you call that binary and it doesn't know anything about completions, it might just run, right? And then it's gonna do what a plugin does. And when you want to obtain completion choices, you don't want, that to happen. You want to know that I'm gonna get the completions that I'm requesting. So we need a safe way to ask a plugin for completions. Since a plugin is only kind of an uncontrolled binary, we need an independent way. So those 2 points kind of go together. We need an independent way to get the completions. So first, I need agreement, kind of, does that make sense to everybody? No comments, so I'm assuming you guys agree. So next step is—
sense. Could you go back to your slides though? I can only see your
Absolutely.
terminal right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is ridiculous on my part. Okay, so back to number one, number two, number three.
Makes sense to me.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so if we make a comparison with Git plugins, so I believe that kubectl plugins are based on Git plugins. So basically for Git, you name anything Git dash and a name, you put it on path and it becomes a plugin. It's the same approach for kubectl. So then I looked at how does Git provide plugin completion. And from what I could gather, I could barely find any documentation. But from what I understood is that if I write a Git plugin and I want to have completion, shell completion, I need to provide a bash function that's called _git and my plugin name. So similar pattern. And then the completion script, the bash completion script, will call that function automatically and then get what the completion choices are. Somehow I have to load that function. As a user, I have to load that function. I need, I could be wrong, but I got the impression that you need a separate one for ZSH and whatever other shell Git supports. But that function is what I was mentioning here before, is an independent way to request shell completion. It's completely separate of the plugin. So if we make a parallel, the proposal does the same thing for kubectl. So instead of a language specific function, the proposal says we could use a language agnostic executable. So you could code it in any way you want. And the kubectl would call the executable and get the completions. We'd use a standard name. So the proposal says kubectl _complete, then the plugin name. So a slight difference from the plugin executable. And instead of somehow loading the function, and again, I might be wrong in what I found out, but we would, kubectl would simply ask to put this new executable on the path. So that's how the user would, and we could automate that. Finally, this whole thing is not magic, right? So it's just a framework. You still need each plugin to provide that executable, that script, to say what the completions are. The good news is Cobra supports that out of the box. And I checked, and more than half the plugins on Crew use Cobra, which is a nice surprise. So it could be quite easy. Through crew, we're going to need some support as well. So I mentioned that, and I forgot his name. I'm sorry. The crew main maintainer.
Ahmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So he kind of voiced an agreement. I gave a reference here. He thought about it and he looked at the proposal and he thought that would fit well, and he'd be willing to augment crew to support that. In the meantime, I also wrote a plugin itself that can generate these scripts, because like I said, half of them are just supported by Cobra. So the plugin can generate scripts so that we can move along faster while plugins choose maybe to support the solution. So last slide, if you guys want to use it, you build your own CTL, kubectl using the PR. You optionally download the plugin I just mentioned, and you ask it to generate scripts for you. And then that's it. You can just, so we can try live if you'd like. I don't know how much time I have. If you can name me any plugin that you like, I can install it as long as it's on crew, and then we can try to just run it. So that's fundamentally the proposal. We don't need to talk about code or anything. It's really about, do you guys think or feel that asking the plugin developers to provide an extra script, getting it deployed by crew, is a good way to move forward?
Well, you've just raised the bar on all PR reviews. From now, we're all going to have slide decks.
It's actually a concept that you really need to distill to the fundamentals, or else it's all over the place.
I'm in a full support for this, but the only thing that I would want to see is the current cap for plugins to be updated with this extension, because I'm not sure how many people are, but for those that are looking at the cap for where we describe how the plugins work, it would be nice to have that mechanism being described instead of being, I don't know, it being a mechanism that we support, but it's nowhere documented. So probably that will be my only request before landing this functionality, so that we have it documented properly in the form of a cap. And then inside of the pieces where I can't remember, but I do remember that we have some docs describing this mechanism, it would be also good to update it, to update them as well. But in general, yeah, I'm in a full support.
That's great. When you mention a cap, is there an existing cap you're talking about updating, or we need a new cap for this particular?
I'm pretty sure that we migrated all the caps for SIG CLI a while back, so there should be already a cap. Let me quickly look it up.
So basically, you're saying it would be an extension to the existing plugin cap. We don't need a separate cap.
There are two approaches. Either we can update the current one or create a new one specifically with the mechanism in place. But since this is actually building on top of that one, I'm inclined to update this one. I pasted in the chat. I've pasted in the chat the current cap describing kubectl plugins.
Perfect. Thanks. There we go there.
Yeah, hopefully we could do better than you mentioned. The Git the documentation for the Git plug completion wasn't all that strong.
That was my impression.
Okay. Well, Mark, we really appreciate you putting all that effort into helping us understand the plugin completions.
My pleasure. The second PR, I think we could skip. I took enough of the time today. I'll probably show up another time if you will have me.
Great. So I saw Cora is here. Cora, would you like to, I'm going to stop sharing. Would you like to share some slides for the next
I just like
topic?
given it's not so much time, I'm fine with just like coming back another week as well. I don't know. It seems like there are a few more items that we all should cover. I don't know.
Yeah, so we have, it's an hour meeting. We have 35 minutes. So I think we'd have time
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Sounds good.
if you'd
Okay.
like to. I mean,
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Okay. Alrighty, can you all see my screen?
yes.
Oh. Okay. So this was a research study that I did with Nick Mitchell over the summer as part of an internship with IBM and their hybrid cloud research group. And we were looking at how different tool modalities like CLIs or IDEs impact development tasks, or just if people use different ones to complete different development tasks. And this is the main finding from our study. So we were looking, and this kind of encompasses our research questions. We are looking at things like just how different levels of experience, how beginners, intermediates, and experts, how their tool preferences come out, and as well as the type of programming tasks, so CRUD programming tasks, debugging stuff or monitoring, and also the tool modality, so a textual, graphical, or some hybrid. So we have here CLI, IDE, web console, and we gave an option to write in another. And this was a survey that we did, and these are the results from that. And we found that a lot of the developers prefer CLIs across these different task types, except for monitoring, really. Monitoring is where they preferred web consoles mostly. And where we started kind of looking into this was in prior work, of course. The work that we found didn't evaluate developer preferences based on different task types, and we thought that could be an interesting thing to look into more. So we looked at all these different developer surveys that have been done throughout the years, and they do look at things like what tool do you prefer when you're doing continuous integration, but there wasn't really a drill down on the different task types, and we want to just explore the task types to get a deeper understanding of what developers are doing every day, and whether, like, how many tools that they're using to complete these different tasks. And so we did this. There is this one paper too that we found that was super relevant. They looked at actually like cloud development in IDEs, and they looked at programming tasks also, but not the types of them. They just looked at levels of difficulty. And so we had this two-part study. We did that survey, and we also did a little follow-up comparative user study. And those are the research questions that I just went over. And the survey, we recruited 60 people, in part thanks to you guys. I was here before and spoke to you all before about this research project. Also SIG usability, and they helped us out with getting visibility for our survey on LinkedIn. And we would have loved to have more participants, of course, but this is just the amount that we were able to recruit in the time frame. And the number of beginner respondents was really small also. There were only about 5 beginners out of those 60 participants. So we would really like to improve this further and just get it out more. And we tried, we had an idea to publish our survey on the Kubernetes website, but there were some issues with it not being completely vendor neutral. So that's something that we're gonna look into in the future. But if anybody else has input on just better ideas for recruiting, we'd really appreciate that. And so we asked them questions about their experience, how frequently they worked on these tasks, and which tool modality they preferred. And so we found that developers frequently work on multiple types of tasks every day. So monitor it, so you can see like up to 17 and 30% many times a day working on CRUD tasks. And then for debugging, it was like 13% weekly, 22% expert. And then it was even more broken down for monitoring. But this is something that we'd also like to further understand is how just like the workflow of people, and you know, a lot of the times we're not working on one thing, we're jumping between different things, and that can impact our productivity. And jumping between different things, we want to be able to do that efficiently. So maybe you're using a different tool for that reason. So
Cora,
this comparative.
Before you go on, go back to the previous slide.
Yeah.
Interesting if we take the cross product of those two charts. So it looks to me like the monitoring tasks you said were the ones that were the least CLI biased, whereas debugging and CRUD were pretty CLI heavy, right? Go back to the first chart, just to remind me of the numbers. Yeah, so they're almost entirely yellow, right? For the CRUD and debugging across expertise levels. Whereas if you go back to then, but the monitoring was, there's still CLI, but it was much more, as you said, web console dominant. But if you go to the other set of charts, even experts aren't doing monitoring tasks very often, right? So it's interesting if you sort of take the cross product of these two and get the actual sort of expected amount of time people are using a particular kind of modality, these CLIs versus IDEs. The numbers for web consoles could sort of go even further down, right? If you take the cross product of those two. I thought that was interesting when I was looking at these numbers.
Yeah, definitely. We wanted to look at the frequency too, because different levels of effort are put into developing these tools. So we wanted to understand a little bit more about how often people are doing tasks that require them to use certain tools and things like that. And so, yeah, we did this. It was a small comparative study. We had 4 participants, and we gave them and we wanted to kind of apply our survey results to this to see, or just to further support them with more results. So we asked for people to complete a programming task on the kubectl CLI and the OpenShift console, and say which one they preferred doing. And we also gathered some data on perceived cognitive burden ratings using the NASA TLX scale. And we had them think aloud while they were doing this programming task of creating a pod or creating a deployment, and then monitoring that. And all of the participants said that they preferred to use the CLI. And so this is something that we definitely like to look into more again. And some of the bits of the think aloud that we gathered too, when people were using the kubectl CLI, where I know there's a faster way to do this. You know, they knew about certain commands that they could use to make it faster, but didn't necessarily remember them at the time. So that's something that was reflected in the responses for how could this tool be improved. Maybe the syntax or other problems, like one of our participants mentioned, a failing watch flag not giving an error message all of a sudden, and so that can be annoying. And then for the OpenShift, they wanted more developer-focused tools or more scripting and automation plugins to be included in that. And overall, there's similar cognitive burden ratings, but slightly lower for the kubectl CLI. And
so I think that's where it's interesting when you talk about investment costs of the kubectl CLI versus the OpenShift console. If despite all the extra, I'm assuming that maybe Red Hat people can chime in here, but I'm assuming that the investment effort for the OpenShift console was probably substantially higher than for the kubectl CLI, and you'd expect some return on that investment. It seems like these numbers aren't really showing that out. Well, that was interesting. Sorry for interrupting. Keep on going.
No, thank you. Please chime in. So in our future work, we want to refine our survey to be vendor neutral and put it on the Kubernetes website so that we can get more participants we can get more beginner responses. That's really important. We'd like to post it on the website and also do some more contextual interviews to more deeply understand, what developers' workflows are like. So there's a Kubernetes project actually on campus. I'm a student at UCSD. There's a supercomputing researching center here, and they do work with Kubernetes, so you can reach out to them. I've been talking with them, hopefully, and also the research group at IBM. That's another place where we could just like deepen our understanding, or coming to special interest groups and just talking with people as well. And also refining CUI. So that's something that I hadn't mentioned in the presentation, but that's a research project that Nick is working on, and it's like a hybrid tool for Kubernetes or just for coding, but for Kubernetes. And we want to use our previous findings to inform, to inform a redesign of the system. And that's an ultimate goal, but also an ultimate goal is just to more deeply understand the breakdown of like time and productivity and people using these tools. And we'd appreciate any feedback that you all have on the study itself, and just where it could go, or how it could, especially how it could be helpful, how we could make our results more helpful. We're like definitely interested in publishing them somewhere, publishing the data soon. But just, interested in hearing feedback. If anybody has ideas for how we could use the results to help out more.
I'm most intrigued by the cryptic syntax for kubectl. That's something that just I can't. I won't be able to go to bed if I don't learn what it means, cryptic syntax for kubectl. I was under the impression that it is the most simplest that can be. I do agree that there are some flags, that there are some commands that are explosion of options and flags and whatever you want to call it. And I've been trying to fight them over the past couple of years to somehow limit the scope to be more targeted. I won't say that I was successful with all, but with some. But I'm curious if there is some more details about what it is, what kind of cryptic syntax we're talking about.
Yeah, I didn't follow up with that person and clarify. Yeah, I think they were identified as a beginner Kubernetes learner though. So I think it's probably has some impact on that. Yeah.
No, that definitely makes sense, because if we could get some more information about what's and that's the area that we would need to focus on the most, is the beginner users, how to make kubectl easier for them to work.
You also, I think, found something interesting that in this group part of the study, people leverage tab completion. That was witnessed. They never leveraged the watch capability, right? Despite the fact that the task was explicitly phrased to say, wait until resources are ready, right? I think that's how you phrased it. And yet none of these people, and some of them were quite expert in KubeCon, used --watch.
So unsurprising, that's not a big surprise to me, because honestly, I've seen many colleagues of mine preferring to use the Unix watch command over the built-in watch that's within the kubectl. The biggest benefit of using the Unix watch command over the kubectl one is that you're getting a fresh view of the entire get command versus just the diffs, because the -- watch works that it will print the current state and then it will show only the differences, which in some ways might be a little bit more harder to parse. But that's how the watches are currently done. Maybe we could make it more towards what the Unix version does, as in print the whole state at once. But that would have to be optional, because I assume that with one it's easy, but if you have like a 50 resources that you're watching, getting updates for one and printing all 50 would be undesirable. So I guess the decision is, we have to weigh in one way or the other for the watch. But yeah, I'm fully aware that there are some discrepancies in that particular functionality.
Cora, are
Corey
you
is
able
on
to?
Slack. Oh, sorry, so Corey's on Slack, so make sure, chime in and let her know any ideas you might have. Sorry, please, Eddie.
Yeah, I just two quick things. Are you able to send us this deck?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I'd love to keep this in our meeting notes and
Awesome.
into our channel too, actually.
Definitely will share. Yeah.
The other thing I wonder, I'm sure we can get funding either from the CNCF or whoever you're working with if we do another one of these. We should run like an ad campaign on Stack Overflow for any questions that are tagged with kube control and stuff. And yeah, there's a lot we can do to get this in front of more development. The marketer in me is coming out now from working with marketing.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Question.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that when we were talking about watch a second ago, that a bunch of the participants were experienced kubectl users. You kind of expected that they would know about watch. What was their pre-existing level of familiarity with OpenShift, like the OC console? Like, were they familiar with both of these tools to the same extent before they performed the task?
Definitely not. They were much less familiar with OpenShift, so they like rarely used it. So that was I don't think that was entirely, I think it would have been better if we had people that were super familiar with OpenShift too, as familiar as they were with the kubectl. So that definitely.
Yeah, I think we actually
also
asked around to see if anybody was a daily driver of the OpenShift console, and we didn't find any.
Yeah.
But if you have any, again, candidates like within our own organizations, I think Cora would love to.
Yeah.
To flesh out that aspect.
Definitely. This was with like 4 people, and we were just kind of trying to figure out what the study could be. And it could definitely be improved more. And I think having people that use OpenShift every day instead of like use kubectl every day, use OpenShift rarely, would be much, much better and much more revealing.
I think the biggest issue, and it will still be, as you said, would be the fact that the web UIs are usually very specific to each product that builds on top of Kubernetes. There used to be a common project called Dashboard for Kube, but that was, I think that was abandoned or even archived by now. So every company makes their own, which just fits their own particular product line, which is
You actually have some
fine.
data on that,
But
Cora, right?
it
You actually
definitely.
for the other. Oh, sorry, Maciej, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just finishing.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
No
I
worries.
think in the charts when she had the other, I think Cora, you actually have data for that too, to say what people actually answered for other. And it was interesting, I think, if I remember correctly, for the monitoring is where there was the most diversity in other. And just speaking exactly to Maciej's point, people were answering, I think, a dozen different random tools that all look pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think that data is also out there.
Yeah.
That we can submit to the pool, Eddie.
Yeah. they said a lot of people mentioned Helm files and K9s and infra. And some people mentioned Kui too.
Thank you so much, Cora.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your comments too. Definitely will be following up. Thank you.
Thanks, Cora. Okay,
Thank you.
so let me share back to the notes. And so the next topic we have, if we're ready to move on, is some discovery cleanup PRs. Is the owner of this item available?
Yeah, I see Arda on the call.
Yeah, hi. After Cora's very interesting presentation, it would be pretty boring to ask reviews, but I will definitely do that. First one was approved, thanks Eddie. But for the second one, server resources function in discovery was deprecated 3 years ago. And I thought that it is good time to remove it from all over the places. And it would be great if you can have a look at, and I wonder your opinions about it. Is there any drawbacks or we can safely remove it? That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll make sure to have a look at it today or tomorrow at latest.
Thanks.
Okay, is there any questions or anything else we'd like to discuss with the discovery cleanup PRs? Okay, we've got Mache and Katrina to talk about the version of customize within kube control.
Yeah, so I spoke with Katrina. No.
Do you want me to give a background on what this is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a feature that sort of spans two of our sub-projects, customizing kubectl. This is actually the #1 feature request on Customize if you count up all the duplicate issue upvotes. I split up the implementation into 2 PRs. The main one is actually the second PR. And the idea here is that end users, when they use kubectl Customize, they want to be able to know what version of Customize they're using. As historically, Customize has been evolving faster than kubectl, and so it's even more important to be aware of what feature set is available to you when you're using these commands, what version, if you're using version 2, 3, or 4, depending on which version of kubectl you're using, you might have very different capabilities. So historically, what they've had to do is go to our README and look at this little chart and sort of find the version mapping, and that is really not a great experience. Nobody likes that. So it, again, is #1 upvoted feature. And it's also been requested, I noticed, on the OC version, which embeds Customize as well. So everyone wants this information. So I took a stab at implementing this and in hopes of getting it into the next release. And yeah, so the 2 parts, the first part here is just to help us Customize maintainers with this tedious process that we have to do periodically now to actually make this integration happen. This is really nothing fancy. It just basically takes a script that existed piecemeal in the Customize README, saying like, go over to a different repo and execute these various lines, and it consolidates it into one executable script on the Kubernetes repo itself, which I think has the obvious advantage of making it easier for us to run, but it also means that we're less likely to get out of date, because if one of these scripts we're depending on is changed or removed or whatever, the person doing that will be able to see that we're actually using the script. So that's what this first PR that's being displayed right now is about. Pretty simple stuff. And I am basing my second PR on top of that, because if we already have that, then I can also add to this to do sort of a verification of the version feature that the kubectl Customize version command outputs the expected thing after we do a version update, just as a little sanity check on the end of the script. So that's why they're based off each other. But the main PR is the implementation really of that subcommand. And I went through a few different iterations trying to decide how to best do this. And where I landed is following an approach that we actually, it's very similar to, I think, the standard approach for embedding version information, because version information is really a property of a release, not of something that's statically a property of individual files in the code. So what's often done as part of release process, and many of the Go tools I've worked on, including Kustomize itself, by the way, and kubectl, is we use LD flags as part of the build process to actually take the release information and embed it into the binary at that time. That way, we're making sure that we're embedding the correct thing for the release that's happening at the moment. So yeah, Kustomize does this, kubectl does this, lots of other Go tools do it. And there's an existing version script that I was able to hook into to grab the Kustomize version and make that available as an LD flag right into the vendor code. So it's actually plugging into the same version provenance code is what Kustomize calls it. And there's precedent for that as well. We're doing that for a client Go for whatever reason as part of the release process. So I'm just imitating that. I think this approach works pretty nicely in that it doesn't interfere with independent build processes. Like if you build OC, and it's embedding kubectl or embedding Kustomize directly, or some other tool that embeds Kustomize directly, it's not, this isn't going to cause you to get an incorrect version readout like you would if we were hard coding inside, like if we're making a constant or something like that, which was a problem with previous approaches when I started working on this. And yeah, so I'm fairly happy with this, but I'm also very open to other approaches. The important thing to me here is that we're able to provide this feature to our users because it's super desired by both the kubectl and the Kustomize communities. So yeah, I had a conversation with Maciej on that, and I know that he's concerns about implementation, so we wanted to discuss that here today and maybe see if anyone else had something to say as well.
I mean, my biggest concern is that I do understand the why people might desire to know the version of Kustomize, but at the same time, I'm not treating Kustomize as a sub tool or anything like that, because that's where standalone Kustomize enters the picture. But I'm treating Kustomize inside of kubectl as a library, and by definition, we don't put that kind of information in kubectl. If you look at kubectl version, you will only see the server version and the client version without going into details that we're using, I don't know, client Go this version, API machinery that version, and so forth and so forth. So that would actually be a precedence for kubectl to give you a little bit more detailed information about the library. Because for me, even if that's exposed directly as a subcommand, I'm still treating that as a library.
I understand that from the maintainer perspective, that's what it is. But if we take the end user perspective, they have no idea how we do the integration, right? Did we do it with a Go module? Did we like download the binary dynamically, like a kubectl plugin? Like they have no idea. So for them, this is an embedded tool, and we actually see a lot of confusion around it not behaving the exact same way as the independent tool, because that's the perception. And you can see that in the issue reports if you read through it, that's really how the user expectation shakes out. Like they really think that they should be able to discover what version it is. And in fact, like we're exposing that in a table because there is a version compatibility. With the client Go version, that's totally irrelevant to the end user. They don't care. So I would argue that this is a distinctive case. And it, like, do you have another example of a subcommand that we have that has a similarly end user relevant version?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still hesitant about that. I do hear what the users might be complaining, but then at the same time, it's easy to verify that this is not a plugin. We still have option to list the plugins, and if you list plugins, you will see that Kustomize is not a plugin, but it's part of the embedded thing.
Plugin or not, it still is information that matters to them.
I was thinking about it a little bit more while we were discussing other topics, and the compromise that I'm most probably leaning towards is embedding the customized version in the kubectl version command. Because that would explicitly say that it's a part of kubectl. I don't want to have subcommands having their own version, because I'm worried that that might be introducing some kind of confusion if we embed and if we present that information next to the client version. And then we're also, because if you look at the, if you invoke kubectl version, we're actually presenting both of the information. We're presenting the client information, and we're also presenting the server information you're talking to. And the two might not necessarily be in line, and there are different things that we do with them. But if we want to do it, then I guess adding the customized version instead of a separate command, or Mark was proposing to add a -- version under the customize command. I think it would be better to organize all that under single version command. That would probably both satisfy users and somehow make it consistent with the rest. I don't know what others are thinking about it.
Does apply-k also have versioning issues? If so, then I think Maciej's suggestion of posting it to the top level makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I would
It's
have pinned
true.
you at, oh, go ahead, Katrina.
Yeah, it's true that it applies to -k as well.
I would have, if I had to guess which way you would have went on this, Maciej, I figured you would have liked this way as opposed to the top level version. But that's what my gut was saying too, might be a better idea. So
I mean, honestly, I would prefer not to expose that information, and I'm struggling really hard to let it through, because it does open a precedence.
What are you worried about exactly? Like, what other command could plausibly have this feature request? Everything else we have is like get. Yeah, they're all resource oriented, right? I don't think there's any other command like this integration.
Right. That's the thing. We're making customized special.
It is special.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
I'm not
and
saying
that's
it's
what
not. It
means
just
this information is relevant.
okay. Let's move it under a consistent place where we present all that information. I completely forgot about the apply-k, as Nick pointed out, and let's make it then a single place to present that information. In that case, I think the test you've added there can be modified such that it will verify if the output of the usual version also contains the appropriate customize, and I'll tag the other in a bit after this call.
Thank you. Just to make sure I understand, I'm totally fine with embedding it in the top level one, and I think the -k is a pretty compelling argument for doing that. Do you want it to appear as like a third thing? Right now I have client server version, server version, and then I have customized version.
Client, customize, server. It should be next to the client, basically.
Sure, and yeah, that would be alphabetical as well, which is nice.
I haven't thought about that one, but yes, that's even better.
And are we okay with the fact that the version information would actually be a lot more sparse than what we have for client? Because one thing that came up in my experimentation here is that because this is an independent code base, it's not actually coming from KK. If I wanted to get crazy and include like the get SHA and other details like that of the release, then we would be bringing the GitHub API into the kubectl build pipeline, which I was thinking was not good.
I think that I assume that you're just following the usual semver, and the version we will be showing there will be basically semver.
So just major, minor, get version, and then all the other stuff don't need it.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
And what does dash dash client mean? Does dash dash client show customize and client now?
Oh, I haven't thought about that one.
Should we have like a dash dash customize?
Instead of adding its own, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that dash client is a Boolean. Yeah.
Dash client only shows it was meant to not require server version, and I'm hesitant on adding flags for each and every single thing, because if you do, you'll get a more detailed information if you ask for YUM or JSON output. So there, yes, that will be a separate field in the YUM and JSON. So you want to make sure that it also prints nicely in those two. But if you wire or not under client, I'm fine with either approach. Probably makes sense to wire it under client as well, because that basically shows everything that's embedded and doesn't require server. That was the idea behind client.
Right. So it's not referring to the client stanza. It's required. It's essentially saying don't contact the server. With
Yes.
Request, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's roughly how I remember the code being written.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right. Great discussion. Thank you very much, everybody. I will get that implemented and hopefully we can get it in.
Thanks, Katrina. Okay, we got about a minute left. We're gonna skip stand-ups. Does anybody else have anything else before we sign off?
Yeah, I'm just going to mention real quick, I forgot to discuss something about the validation stuff. So I'm going to post in the Slack channel about incompatibility that I found between server-side and client-side validation recently that I wanted to run by you all. So heads up for that.
Please help with reviews.
Okay. Appreciate you spending your time with us, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Bye. Thank you.
Well,